A Swift Kick in the Ass, episode 55.
All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass. Join the journey of lifelong friends, John Curren and Tom Stewart, as they make conventional thought bend over and take a boot to the keister. Warning, listeners may notice a force equal to or greater than needed to get your ass moving. A swift kick in the ass. Living life on your terms.
Welcome, I'm Tom Stewart, and I'm joined with my lifelong childhood friend, John Curren. And today we talk about why didn't I think of that? Creativity Demystified. Welcome to the show, John.
Thanks, Tom. You know, this is such an interesting topic for me. Just recently, within a period of about 10 minutes, I saw two different posts on Facebook that made me say, why didn't I think of that? And I think that a lot of our listeners have probably said the same thing to themselves. And I saw these two inventions, and they just seem so simple. It's like, why didn't I think of that? You know, I could be a millionaire right now if I would have just thought of that simple idea. I think we've all had that ideas.
Yeah, and this is not necessarily just, as far as creativity, as far as inventing stuff, but it's also creativity and how to change your life and how to make a change and how to get your creative juices flowing. And when that, there's sometimes that you're just stuck and you can't think of anything. It's like when you have writer's block, you need to take a step back. That's what we're discussing today.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. This is not just about inventions. Even though I think, sometimes those inventions are so cool. It's just,
oh, absolutely, man. They get your brain flowing. And
yeah. And I think it tells us a bigger story. Yeah. I mean, these inventions, it tells us a lot about how we think, and these walls that we put up around our thought processes, when we fall into a routine, when we're doing the same thing day in and day out, we're not only doing the same things, but we're also thinking them too. And our brains, in an effort to conserve energy, they don't want to waste, any energy is just precious. And so when we're doing things the same way day in and day out, we tend to not think about them. That's called a habit, a habit or a routine. It just becomes automatically. So we don't even bother to think about what we're doing. And I think a lot of us, when we do that, our creativity just goes out the window.
We've had the shows on falling into a rut, and that's kind of what happens when you fall into a rut. You're not motivated. You don't see things clearly, and you don't see the possibilities that you could actually hold in your life. John, I went to the Coconut Grove Art Festival this weekend, and it's one of the nation's bigger art festivals where some of the best talented artists from across the country converge down in Miami and Coconut Grove. And it's awesome because I love going there, and because it sparks your creativity. You see these paintings and sculptures and things from electronics to art to just creative ways that people express themselves, even music. And there was a box, and it was from Guatemala, and it's this little box. It's a wooden box with a couple slits cut into it, and the guy has a mallet, and he was banging on it, and it sounded like he's playing a xylophone. It was beautiful, and you're like, how the hell did someone figure out that a wooden box can make those kind of noise, that beautiful music come out of it? It's really, really awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. If you look at a box, you're exactly right. How did anyone think of that, and how would anyone find out that it would make such a beautiful sound? I think that's the way I think about these inventions. It's like when you look at a tape measure. One of the inventions I looked at was this tape measure that had a built-in marker at the bottom of it. So as you extended out the tape measure, you could just mark your wood and then go on to the next measurement and mark it again. It was simple. It's not a problem for me because I usually I don't mark wood a lot, but when I do, I use a pencil or a pen, and it's not a big deal. But I think that right there is the root of, or the solution to unleashing your creativity. You need to creativity really begins with a problem, right? You're trying to solve some type of problem, and if you have solved that problem, then you don't waste any energy trying to solve it. You're already doing it one way. So I think we need to try to remove those walls and really, think like a 5-year-old. A 5-year-old sees everything as being brand new to them, because it is. They're able to be creative because they don't have these walls that our experiences put up for us. Um, everything is brand new.
What you were just discussing reminds me of the product of, you ever seen the pen and on the other side is a highlighter, and you just flip it over, and if you have to highlight something, it's right there rather than having two objects or putting one down and picking another one up.
Yep.
Someone has thought, hey, it's crazy. Why don't I just put a highlighter on the other side? Something so simple that you say, well, yeah, why didn't I think of that? But it solves the problem and it makes things easier.
Yeah, even if I saw this post recently. It said, 6 plus 3 equals 9, but also 5 plus 4 equals 9, and 8 plus 1 equals 9, and 7 plus 2. You have all these different ways that come up with the same answer. They all equal the same thing. It doesn't make one way better or worse than the other. It's just a different approach. There's a countless ways to get from point A to point B, and like I said, there's no real difference. It's not better or worse. It's different. But so many of us get into this, this thinking that there's only one way to do things, and that's just absolutely not true at all.
I saw a very creative ad, and it's funny because what the guy did is he said, like, he's acting like he's a mind reader, right? He has little cards, he's flipping them. You see those one where people write, things on videos and they flip to the next card, and they're not speaking. So what he says is pick a number between 1 and 50, and each digit has to be an odd number. So 13, 19, 17, 33, that kind of thing, right?
Okay.
And so he says, I'm going to guess your number. So I'm thinking of a number. He'd never guessed my number, but what the whole thing is a Facebook ad. So he knows that there's a large volume of people clicking on that. So there's going to be someone that he gets that number correct. And the person that he gets that number correct, he asks for them to share that video. So what he's doing is he's creating a viral campaign, because he knows half the people are going to get the wrong number, but some of them are going to get it right. And the ones that get it right are going to be like, my God, how did that guy know what number I'm going to pick? Because there's no logical explanation. So they'll be curious enough and they'll share it. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. So many things are a number game. And what that guy is doing really is he's playing the numbers. He's counting on a certain percentage of people who he's going to pick it, and they're going to think he's a genius. I agree that, that is genius as far as a marketing campaign is concerned. But we need to think about these things and be aware of them, and we can apply them in our own lives. Recently, my sister went on a ski trip, and she has an annual ski trip with one of her friends, and things have been really kind of tough for my sister recently, and she's really just heads down, trying to work through these issues. And she was really hesitant to go away on this trip, but it's with one of her dearest friends, and they do it every year. And she decided, well, she was able to use, I guess, points or get some really good deal on plane fare, and she had made these plans a year ago, and she decided to go. And when she got back, she said her trip wasn't perfect. The airline actually misplaced her suitcase, and so and she had prepared all this food for like a week in California. I mean, in Colorado. She brought food with her. She froze it, and it was all in her luggage. And here she is, thinking, what am I going to do? All the food's it's going to thaw out. It's going to leak all over my bag and my clothes and everything. Lots of problems that she had. It was not a perfect vacation, but she said it was just one of the most fantastic vacations she's ever had, because she was able to step away from her current life and her, the daily routine of things, and put things into perspective. She came back refreshed and looking at the world a little bit differently, even though, like I said, that trip was not perfect. She had a lot of challenges to face, but she came back, a different, with a different view of the world. And I think that that's because she got out of that daily routine, and she had to think in different ways and be creative, and it was just, wonderful, I think, for her. I had the same experience when I went down to Florida, Tom, in October, when we attended the Lifestyle Design Summit with JB Glossinger. Uh, it, it was an adventure for me. I mean, I was only gone a few days, but it it doesn't seem like much, like going to a new airport, and driving a few hours and like planning this little trip. Doesn't seem like much on the surface, but it meant the world to me, because it was a new adventure. It was something new. It was something exciting, something I hadn't done before.
Yeah, it's taking a break. It's taking a break from your normal routine. You're traveling somewhere else. You're not, doing the same daily routine. It gets you. That's one of the things to stimulate your creativity, is to take a break. Do something different. Listen to different music. Take a different route to work. If you're still continuing to drive to work the same way every day, it gives you a different way to experience life. Eat something that you've never eaten. If you work out, try a different workout that you've never done. Experience different things, and it kind of, by doing that, it pulls you like out of the rut we were talking about, but it also pulls you out of just being in an ordinary flow of just a day in and day out sort of stuff that seems to bog us down and keep us from being creative.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, a lot of the way we feel is based on our mindset. And by making small little changes, by doing tiny little things that really don't seem like they would do much, they can have a great impact on you. I'm reading a book by Randy Gage now. It's called Mad Genius, and he does talk about creativity a little bit. And what I found interesting is he suggested he suggested several ways to stimulate creative thinking, uh, really by asking, what if questions to yourself. If it were possible, how would it be done? Asking yourself these things, questioning the premise, uh, and questioning, just asking yourself a lot of questions, and thinking again like a 5-year-old child. Remove what you know. Try not to think about what you know, even if it doesn't make sense. You're starting to kind of unleash your creativity.
Yeah,
One of the
if you come up with those open-ended statements, such as, I have what it takes to figure this out. I'm open to new possibilities. There's always a way. If you ask yourself those things, you're absolutely right. It keeps you from hindering yourself, of saying, instead of saying, I don't know, or I can't do this. Just thinking. I know people will say, oh, is this a bunch of malarkey? But if you think negative thoughts, man, it does. It bleeds into everything. If you try to just, like you said, approach it like a child, your eyes will open up to a lot of different, opportunities.
Yeah, and we all have routines, and they're not necessarily good or bad, but they're habits. They're things that we don't think about, we just do. So why don't you try, like, if you wear a wristwatch, try wearing that wristwatch on the other wrist. And what that's going to force you to do is it's going to force you to think in a different way. Instead of looking down at your left wrist, you're going to now have to look at your right.
Now,
And
does that matter? Because I don't care. I don't use a watch. I use my phone, and I keep it in my left pocket. Do I have to move it to my right now?
hey, man, if you always keep it in your left, you
And
could.
the reason why? Even my wallet, I used to keep in my left back pocket. Now I've moved it to the front of my pants. But the reason why is, remember when I broke my arm when I was like 13
Yeah.
jumping ramps, and when I had it was my right arm, so I had to keep my keys, everything, my wallet, everything in my left pocket so I could get to it. And ever since that, it's created a habit that I've never changed away from.
Yeah, and if any kids are listening to the show, I would say cover your ears right now, because what I'm going to say is not kid friendly, but if you're single, why don't you try switching hands for once? It'll be like a new experience for you.
Your mind's always in the gutter, man. I think we have to go back to our porn episode.
Anyhow,
so I'll return. Another thing, John, another one that you're talking about with your sister, which I was going to bring up, is returning to nature. Sometimes it's taking a walk in a park or going out. If you live by an ocean, well, I happen to be lucky that I live in South Florida, so I can go to the beach. If you live by a lake, if you live by a forest, you can go for a hike. I saw the most awesome movie this weekend, and it was an IMAX movie, and it was all about the national parks, and it was narrated by Robert Redford, and he was talking. They covered like Yosemite and Yellowstone and Everglades National Park, and it went through the whole history how Theodore Roosevelt created the protection of the parks and created 100 national parks, I think it was, and it's just you see these breathtaking things like the Grand Canyon, and you're like, my God, you see that, and it's like all the mundane stuff that we go through just kind of washes away. And it just you see people climbing up the side of ice glaciers, and people walking through the redwood forest where these things it looks like the Endor out of Star Wars. It's just amazing, beautiful stuff that you can't even think about the crap that is going on in your life when you're in such awe of basically God's nature or God's divineness through nature. And I know you don't have to believe in God, but just to appreciate what we have here on earth, and even in America, how lucky we are here to have so many beautiful sites. And I know this is a national, this is an international podcast, but all over the world, we have all sorts of things that we really should try to take time and try to at least see or put it on your bucket list before you kick the bucket.
Yeah, and it's those experiences too that transform us. A lot of time we get so focused on a goal, and we're just spinning our wheels. We're not getting anywhere. In that case, sometimes it's a good idea. You can get traction and it seems counterintuitive, but to remove yourself, stop thinking about what you're trying to do, and switch gears and do something else. Like, for instance, if you're trying to get in shape and you're trying to lose weight, but you're just not really getting motivated, taking a trip and going out into the park, going for a walk, going for a hike, going swimming, jumping off of a rope swing. I mean, you will you'll be getting exercise that way and having fun, and you won't even be thinking that, what, I'm actually losing weight. If you do that on a routine basis. I know I've mentioned Three Fat Guys in the Woods, the TV show, and and it's just amazing to me how many times the guys on that show talk about saying I really wanted to do this, or I wanted to do that, and I got out here, and like the one guy wanted to quit smoking cigarettes, and he's like, I haven't smoked a cigarette in 3 days, and I don't miss it at all. I'm too busy trying to survive. I'm trying to stay warm. I'm trying to build a fire. So you can challenge yourself in other ways, and actually still move towards the goals that you really want to achieve.
Exercise, when you bring it up, it's also it's a great alternative when you can't be creative at all. Because this is what happened to me, John. When my father passed away back in 2003, I went through a stage where he passed away in January, and at Christmas I had got my wife had bought me this Lego Mindstorms. It's something that normally you give like a teenager or something, but it's a programmable computer that you can make little robots and stuff. And I was like real into robots, and I was reading a lot about it, and I wanted to create some things. And all of a sudden, when my father passed away, I lost all creativity. I had because I like to draw. I like to do a lot of different creative things with comics and so forth. And I just lost all of it. I had no motivation whatsoever to be creative. So what I did is I returned. That was my point where I went back to the martial arts. And, it put me on another journey, another pathway that has stayed with me that I wouldn't have had otherwise. but it also allowed me to kind of like free up my mind so I could start becoming creative again. And eventually I did and started getting more interested in all that stuff, you know. But, when that first happened, I gave away that kit. I didn't even open it. It was brand new. And that's what I was getting to is, I gave it away to like my nephew. I was just like, here, you'll make better use of this because I just couldn't go there.
Yeah, you should go with what you know. A lot of people don't think of themselves as being creative, but really, creativity requires that you build upon your experience and you use your natural talents and interests in ways that are new. We take so much for granted. I think we know what we can do, but not everyone can do what we do. We might not think it's very special, but to someone else who can't do that, or I mean, like Tom, with your jujitsu, I know you've been involved in martial arts for many, many years. I mean, since we're teenagers, really, you've been interested in this, and I never got into that, and I think that's awesome, and I think you can build upon all that knowledge and experience, and you can communicate things and based on what you know. I mean, yeah, I think that's awesome. I am when I was in college, I had a motorcycle, and I remember I was riding it out in the country. I was by myself, and all of a sudden it stopped running, and I thought, here I am. There's nothing around me but cows, and it's a pretty scary situation. But because I know a little bit about mechanics and how things work, I was able to discover that a fuse popped, so it wasn't getting any electric, wasn't getting any current. It was a blown fuse. I didn't have an extra fuse, so I knew enough to tie that together and take out the fuse. I got the bike running and I got home. I was able to leverage my knowledge that I had, and get myself out of a bad situation. And I think that we can all do that. We can use our experience to help us unleash our creativity.
It's like MacGyver. Remember MacGyver? It was a TV show back like in the 80s where he always got in these binds, and he would use his knowledge and he would improvise. And so he would have like a paper clip, some bubble gum, and a match, and he would like be able to make like a grenade or something out of it and blow off the door. Or it was just crazy stuff. But it always, you always watched the show to find out what MacGyver was going to do next in order to escape whatever situation he was in. And like you said, John, you can really leverage in real life, you can leverage your experience like that. My mentor in broadcast engineering was a gentleman named Ernesto Custodio. And Ernesto at one time used to work in South America, where he would go up to these transmitter sites and they didn't have supplies. And so he would actually have to wear like an oxygen mask because it would be so high on a mountain that, it wasn't like you could just run back down to Radio Shack and pick up what you need. So he'd have to improvise. And he told me one time he was there and he needed to change a resistor. He needed this different resistor for the transmitter. So he was like, if I shave off some of this other resistor that I have, I can change the value and make it electrically fit into the circuit. And that's what he did. And he taught me how to improvise, taught me how to think. That was the main thing. It wasn't so much like, here, do this, do that. He just taught me how to think in order to solve problems. And it's a great skill to have. And that comes from experience and creativity merged together.
Yeah, and the more you think and the more you problem solve, the better you're able to do it. It is that experience, and it's also a confidence in yourself. Have you seen the movie The Martian?
No, not yet. I've heard some great things about it.
Amanda and I just watched that last night, and it really, I mean, that guy, that astronaut, he goes through a lot of that creative problem solving that you were really talking about, except his life was on the line. I mean, don't want to give too much away, but obviously you recognize that there's an astronaut. He's stuck on Mars. He was left behind, and he had to survive. And so, he only had so many food. He had food rations for so much time, but he uh, he figured out, well, if he could take the potatoes that he had and he could grow more food. So he was he was he he was addressing problems as they came along, and it was, his life was on the line, and it was not perfect. Things would go wrong, but that just, you can either give up, or you can, put those feelings aside and say, I'm gonna make this work,
And
and
that's
just
much like
do the
Apollo
work.
13, which is really a real story, a true story. How they survived. They had to, figure out which systems they could shut down in order to keep the life support system running. And, it's in that time
Yeah.
of peril, you got to think. And luckily they had a lot of, very smart people helping them, with those decisions on how to get out of the situation that they were.
Yeah, and I think it helps if you're smart, but if you're not very smart, you can still solve your own problems, and you can still be creative. Uh, it. I think a lot of people are just they're scared to fail, so they don't want to take a chance, and they just give up before they even try. But how do you know if you don't even try? Um, that there's that old saying that, winners never quit and quitters never win. Well, it's a cliche, because it's true. um, it, it's as old as mankind. If you don't try, you are going to fail, and you're never going to win, because you're not in the game.
John, all this is a mind game. All success or just making it through life is one big mind game, and we know this. We have all kinds of people out there that are trying to sell us things and trying to, motivate us or what have you, and it all boils down to mindset. And some people have different takes. But one technique that you can use too is, you know, what if someone else was in your shoes? You want to accomplish something. What would they do? If you wanted to get fit and all of a sudden you were Arnold Schwarzenegger or had his brain in your body, what would he do in order to make you fit? It could even be a fictional character. I used to think sometimes I was like, I love comic books, and I was like, what would Batman do right now? Because like you said, he wasn't the smartest guy. He was intelligent, but he wasn't smarter than some of the super criminals that he fought. But he always used ingenuity in order to outthink them, and persistence and preparation. But I was thinking, well, if Lex Luthor was in my body, what would he do to make the next money? Or if Donald Trump, and God forbid, was in your brain and you wanted to make money, what would he do if all of a sudden he finds himself in your situation? What best would he do in order to propel you? And in the same vein, you can stand on the shoulders of giants, real people that you can go on YouTube or the internet and hear speeches and stuff from some of the greatest minds in the world and learn from them and find people that are in a situation similar to you or were in a situation similar to you and got out of it and how they did that, and see if you can replicate it or copy it or emulate it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Here we're talking about creativity, and we mentioned looking to see what other people have done. And it's really, that doesn't seem to me to be so creative when you can find an answer on Google for just about anything that you want. But that is certainly part of it, because it's good to understand what people have. Certainly, I think it can get in your way. And if you want to follow the herd and do what everyone else has done, um, you can do that. But it does not hurt for you to look at what other people have done and then apply it in your own way. You can use creativity. You can learn from people's mistakes. Um, and I think that is an opportunity to express your creativity.
Well,
You-
Picasso said good artists copy and great artists steal. So, this is coming from one of the greatest artists that, in our history. And, it's no shame in copying what someone else is doing. This is not, school where you're going to get in trouble. This is life. And if someone else is successful, there's no reason to copy what they're doing and try to emulate it and try to see if it works for you.
yeah. So in Randy Gage's book, Mad Genius, he's, I'm just going to read a little couple sentences from him because I think it really applies. Many people think that they are not creative. We've heard that before from studies about adults versus children. But creativity is not some hocus pocus voodoo talent reserved for the elite. Rather, it's a matter of tapping into what you already have and combining your unique interests and gifts in a new way. So you're leading a company now, but we're a drummer for your college rock band. Cool. Why not use drumming as an analogy in your next internal presentation? Talk about the importance of rhythm, coordination, and focus. And he goes into all these different, examples. And I think that, he says, creativity requires courage to explore ideas and instincts, no matter how quirky they may be, to create a connection between two seemingly disparate elements, courage to put it out in the world. And if it's not great out the gate, that attempt to do that will actually build, and that idea will lead to another idea. So each idea that you have will spur new ones. So keep trying and don't give up, and keep thinking through, and you will come up with a solution. It's funny, Tommy. I was thinking as I was preparing for this discussion, I was thinking about back when we were kids and we watched Saturday morning cartoons when all the toy manufacturers had just awesome commercials for toys and action figures in particular. And I remember watching these commercials, and these toys just looked amazing. I mean, they flew, they breathed fire, they did just amazing things. And we would beg our parents to get these toys. And when we finally got them, I think a lot of the time we're disappointed because it didn't live up. They had built these huge expectations in our minds over how great these toys were. And when we got them, we're like, the hell is this? It's nothing like the commercial. They were trying to sell a product, but we are just kids, and we weren't thinking about how realistic, it was and what they said.
The thing is, that was the 1970s, right, John? And nothing's changed. They still do the same thing, and we do it to ourselves. When you think about, hey, I can't wait till I get this new car, or I'm going to get a Corvette, and this is going to change, something about me. And then you get it, and you realize it hasn't changed anything. It might be a house, or it might be, whatever the latest trend is that you want to do, and in the end, it's looking for external things to try to create our happiness, and we know that that doesn't happen. It has to come internally.
Yeah, sea monkeys, I think, are the great example.
Yeah,
remember how they
books, man.
Remember in the back of the comic book, they had the picture of the sea monkeys, and they had the castle, and the family was, all there smiling and stuff like that.
Yeah, and they would talk in the copy. It would talk about how they frolicked and played, and you're picturing, because they had like a beach ball, and you're like, wow, these are like little creatures that are gonna be like people,
little tridents.
Yeah, and then you get them, and they're brine shrimp, and
you
like
buy a castle.
Dots.
You buy.
They come in a little envelope, right? A little envelope, and you spill them in some water, and all of a sudden these little things float around, and you're like, that's it? Is there something going to happen?
Yeah, and it just takes forever, and then finally you start to see maybe like it seems like the water moved a little bit, and it's your brine shrimp.
Well, I had some. I had one. He ate all the other ones, I guess, and there was this one little fat one swimming around. That's all there was, and then he eventually died. And I was like, oh, no more sea monkeys. But I've seen those revived several times. You can still buy them. You can find them online if you want. If you really are into getting ripped off.
Well, it's a good trip down memory lane, but they do still sell them, and I think it really plays into what we're saying is people are trying to sell you products. They're trying to sell us products day in and day out. These commercials, they're going to tell you anything so they can sell product.
Can I tell you something that was kind of funny, and I actually embarrassed my son Hunter? We went to a Comic-Con that was down here in South Florida a little while ago, and when I was a kid, there was a a book in the back of the comic books, and it said The Art of Neil Adams, right? And it had Marvel versus DC, and it had this thing, the little guy that looked like it was Atomic Mouse, but he looked like Mighty Mouse, right? He was standing in between them. So I saw the cover of this, and being a kid, I was like, oh, this is going to be the coolest. This is Marvel versus DC. They've never done that before. At that time, they had never met. So I ordered this book, and it took like 8 weeks or more to get to me. And I finally get it. I open it up. It has no pictures of Marvel versus DC in it whatsoever. All it is art and drawing, which just said The Art of Neil Adams. So yeah, that's what I expect. But it was like pictures of Conan and Tarzan and some scantily clad women, and it was all black and white and nothing, no other picture other than the one on the cover. And I was so disappointed. So I went to this Comic Con, and Neil Adams, who's an old guy, old man now, was actually given a panel. I told my son, I said, "Oh, let's go see this guy." So, you get to ask questions. So that was the first thing I brought that up. And he was a grumpy old man. He was like, "Well, you should have read the title. It said The Art of Neil Adams." But, and so Hunter's just like slinking down in a chair going, "Oh God, Dad, do you really have to ask him?" But it was funny.
Yes. So, we talked about reading, reading and looking on YouTube and seeing what other people have to say and what they've done and learning from each other. And, I say it is possible for, something like that to literally change your life just overnight. And I'll give an example. Have you ever read a book that opened your eyes to something that after reading that book, it made you think about things that you just could never see the world in the same way again? If you think about an experience like that, where you read a book, it opened your mind, it changed your view of the world, you can take the next step and apply it to how am I going to apply that knowledge that you have there to something different? And
that book was called Nice Guys Don't Get Laid. Remember that? I guess it's equivalent to the game. That's the big one now.
I didn't need to read it because I knew that already. But that does happen to people. I mean, and we actually have a list of books, recommended books on our website. If you want to see any of the books that have influenced Tommy and I know that there are several books out there that I really saw as being life-changing. It opened my eyes, and I never saw the world the same way. And there's no going back from that. So, I think that's something that you can do and something you can apply to your own life. I've been thinking too a lot about, we talk about how people that are close to us and who die, and how that changes your mindset. I've talked about my dad. Tom talks about his dad. I've had, several friends who died early on. And there was a guy from high school, Tommy. I don't remember his name. I think his name was Steven. But he was, and I remember because I got into a fight with him. And I felt kind of bad about it. But his parents gave him like a 280Z for his birthday.
A T-top. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah.
And yeah, what the story was is that he got hit by a drunk driver, and he wasn't wearing his seatbelt, and he flew outside of that T-top and hit his head on a bus bench and died at the age of 16. And he was a real liked kid, real popular, yeah. real funny and friendly. I remember he used to come up to me and, like always ask me stuff about working out, because at that time I worked out a lot, and he was like real skinny, and, he was just a really nice kid. In fact, on Facebook not long ago, I actually connected with his brother and his sister. It was in one of those groups about Hollywood, where we grew up, and they talked about him. I emailed that. I mean, I made a message back. I said, "Hey, I went to school with your brother. I remember exactly when that happened." And it's kind of wild, because someone that lost their life so quickly, But I'm sorry to interrupt with that. It's Stephen. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, no, and I was just going to say, no, I think that's great that you gave some background to it, but it's things like that that make you realize that this life can change in a New York minute. Um, we might have control over it. We might have control over our life experience, or we may not at all, and we just never know what's coming our way. So it's just it's something I think that changes mindset, and it's a good reason to be creative. If you really want something out of life, you got to go for it, man. When you have the chance, don't, it might take you a while, but don't ever give up your dreams and keep thinking, keep thinking, keep thinking, keep questioning, and you'll keep moving forward, and you will eventually go get what you want out of life.
So I got some other techniques, John, that were kind of related to, basically when I was talking about steal like a thief, and you know, take other people's lessons that they've learned, and kind of, if they've done something, some of the ideas that you can do is you can substitute, combine, adapt, modify, magnify, eliminate, rearrange, or put to other uses. Give you an example, right? Like in 1904, right? The hot dog, it was created by this guy named Antoine Fuschwanger. Get that? That's a nice name for creating a hot dog. When he was selling sausages at the Louisiana expedition, right? And the problem was, is back then they didn't have buns. What they did is people were burning their fingers because they just sell the sausage, and you'd grab it and try to hold it. So he was like, well, maybe if I give the people plates or cotton gloves, so people. The problem was is that it was expensive to create plates and cotton gloves because people wouldn't return them. So his brother-in-law happened to be a baker, and he was like, well, what if I just bake like a long bun with a slit in it? And because they modified, that was an example of modifying something. They created from the sausage a completely new product that we know as the hot dog.
So you're saying he liked big buns and he could not lie?
Yeah, I guess so. The name like Bushwanger.
Yeah, it's
The other example, and this goes along with, if you have hot dogs, you got to have hamburgers, right? And everyone's familiar with McDonald's. Well, I don't know if everyone knows what the backstory is of McDonald's. There was a guy named Ray Kroc, and basically he was a middle class high school dropout, and he was a piano player. He sold paper cups, and eventually he got into selling. He was like a door to door salesman, selling milkshake machines, right? And the thing about these milkshake machines is they could make 6 milkshakes at once. So he had one restaurant out in California, a hamburger stand, and they ordered 8 of them, and he was like, 8 of these machines that can make 6 at a time. Why do they need so many? So it got his curiosity out. So he went out, and it happened to be the McDonald's brothers, right? So it was Dick and Maurice McDonald. They had the hamburger stand, and what they basically had done is inadvertently stumbled upon the concept of fast food. Well, Roy Kroc was a smart guy. He had done some real estate and stuff, and he was like, tell you what if I become partners with you guys? And, because you guys are happy what you're doing, you're not looking to expand, but I can expand for you, and we'll split the revenues. We'll become partners. So I'll take care of opening any new stores and, handling, getting people to operate them, run them. You don't have to worry about it. You just sit back and collect a check. So they were like, okay. So he started doing that. Like the first one he went to, he didn't have money to buy the real estate. So he worked with a construction company and said, hey, look, I'll give you half ownership of this restaurant if you build it. So he was using a little creativity there in order to get that happening. So they built the restaurant, and what he really learned, it was like, if I get the franchisee to pay for the rent, right, they're actually paying the lease that I'm paying for the real estate, and they have to pay a franchise fee that I can give to the McDonald's brothers. So what they did is they started building an empire of real estate. And still to this day, McDonald's makes 10% of their income from real estate, right? So that also gave them an advantage over their competitors because everyone else was paying rent. So McDonald's had less overhead in order to pay, and that way they could make everything cheaper and faster.
And fatter.
Yes, and fatter, and the country fatter, right? But so eventually, that guy, he bought out the McDonald's brothers, and became a multi-billionaire. The thing is, what he did is he adapted someone else's idea. So that was what I was talking about when you adapt someone. He magnified it by creating, franchises, and he put it to other uses by creating additional revenue streams for his company. And that nowadays McDonald's owns some of the highest rated property across the country because they have all these corners and these major intersections in all the large cities. So it's really a brilliant guy that he was.
Yeah, it's funny because that technique, or what you just talked about, is mentioned in, again, Mad Genius, and it's called the scamper technique, and it's similar. It's not exactly what you said, but it's 7 different ways you can view an idea. And for this, he gave the example of using an umbrella, and I think it will.
Can I say something, John?
Yeah, go ahead.
Substitute, combine, adapt, modify, magnify, eliminate, rearrange, and put to other uses. What's that spell? If you took all the first letters. Scamper.
Okay. Yeah, no, well, there's not magnify on this. It's
modify.
Yeah, modify. So I guess it is, I guess that's just a different M word, but yeah. Here's the example they give for using an umbrella. And we all have day-to-day, we use products in our day-to-day life. We're all familiar with what an umbrella is, and this might help you. This technique could help you look at it a little bit differently, and and using this technique, applying it to an umbrella. So substitute: use a plastic bag stretched over a wire coat hanger. That would also work as an umbrella. Combine: add a radio and digital clock to the handle. So you're combining, different uses, just like Tom had mentioned about the highlighter and the pen combined in one. That's the different way. Adapting: make it useful for joggers by attaching it to the body. A body umbrella?
I've seen those people wear those little hats that have umbrellas on.
Yeah, I guess that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
You look like a dumbweed doing that.
I know. Modify: make a big enough one to cover several people at once, like a golfing umbrella. That would be a modification of an umbrella. Or I guess modifying it so that they're really tiny, and so they're not as bulky and kind of more portable. Put together uses: use the tip for making holes or picking up litter. I guess you could use it as a sword, right? We used to use umbrellas as swords.
Yeah, you're forgetting about the Penguin in Batman. Remember, he have a knife pop out of it. He could shoot bullets out of it. He could shoot gas pellets. He did everything with that umbrella.
Yeah,
and like one of the last episodes of Gotham, I saw he shoved his umbrella down some guy's throat. So it's also a murder weapon.
Yeah. Which leads us to our next one: eliminate.
Perfect.
Take away the metal spokes that are always bending. Replace them with maybe nylon or something like that. Replace. It's just another way to create a different take of an umbrella. And then the last one is reverse or rearrange. Have the umbrella fold up instead of down to catch the water. So, I think that there are different arrangements for that solve the same problem, but in different ways. Like you wear it as a hat, you can wear it as a brooch.
Well, yesterday when I was at the art festival, it was very sunny, and I have light skin, so I burn easily. And we went as a group, and one of Jennifer's friends was like, "Oh, Tom, I have my umbrella. You want to use that?" And I'm like, "No, not unless I'm like dressed up like I'm some kind of like extravagant person that needs an umbrella, like I'm like some kind of superstar. But I'm not. There's no way I'm walking around with an umbrella. Keep me shielded from the sun unless I'm like in a desert by myself."
If you could have pictured Tom, in the late 80s, maybe early 90s, he used to like these white linen suits. They were the fashion back then. This is the day of Miami Vice. So he had those pointy-toed shoes, the Capezios. I
Yep.
remember
Yep.
where because I had them. Well, I you ma- I know you wore parachute pants,
Yeah,
but
I
this
wore
was
parachute pants. I had
so
the
did
kind
I.
that also there was a pair of pants that they had a zipper that ran all the way up the leg, and if you unzipped it, there was like another color. So if my pants were white, it would be black inside. That was real. That was part of the breakdancing fashion back then.
So Tom wore these white linen suits, and he had this fedora hat. It was also white.
I didn't have a hat.
Oh, yeah, you did, buddy.
I never
You had
had that.
Goldie. You had the long flowing Goldilocks.
Oh, I did have a hat, but
Like
not with the suits though. I had a hat when
yeah,
I would
you
go to
did,
Disney
dude.
World. Yeah,
You
yeah.
did, and you probably had an umbrella. I'm picturing you with a cane or an umbrella.
I might have maybe for prom. I might have had like a walking stick or something like that.
No, you weren't that cool at prom. Okay, this was after high school.
No, prom. I had a stomach virus and I was puking in the bushes, and some people walk by and go, "Oh, this guy had too much to drink," and I didn't have anything to drink. I was
Yeah,
sick.
quote unquote stomach virus. I've had some stomach viruses too, so I won't put you down. But anyhow, hopefully this has been a good, entertaining, and informative discussion about how to apply creativity. And
I think we've about covered every. The only
yeah,
other thing I could think of, another technique, would be mind mapping, which, if you haven't done it before, basically you put one central idea and put a circle around on a piece of paper, and then you make a little branch and make another circle, and you put something related to it. So if I'm doing something about about our show, I might put podcast, and then put a branch out and put a circle and put website, branch out from that, email capture, another one, building the audience, how to build the audience, giveaways, different things like that. And before you know it, your whole page is filled up, and it kind of lets you get all that stuff out of your mind and put it on paper. So it's a great tool. And there's even software that you can find it, free or paid online.
Tom, I know you've shared with me these mind mapping tools, and honestly, I've never been able to really get it. I mean, I understand how you explained it, and it makes perfect sense to me. But in my trying to use those type of tools, it's much more difficult.
To be honest, I think the easiest way to do it is a piece of notebook paper and a pen or a pencil. It's really, because then you're not trying to fumble with trying to, oh, this bubble's not reaching. Before you know, it's distracting having this software that's not playing nice with you, and that's what happens. I mean, of course, yeah, you can learn it, and then you probably won't have that problem. But I find just a piece of paper and sit down with a pencil is a way to get those thoughts out, and it's just really easy, and it's simple.
Yeah, and that might be a good topic for one of these next episodes, is how to harness your creativity. Because I know for personally speaking, I sit down with my notepad and my paper, and I just have a brain dump, and that helps get the thoughts out of my head, stops them from bouncing around and causing a lot of damage. And I found as I get older, it's so important for me to do that, get those thoughts out of my head, write them down. But where I struggle then is with getting those thoughts so organized and focused, because it's great to have all these different ideas, but if you're here and there and and elsewhere, it's difficult. So
it becomes overwhelming and you get
yes.
scattered. Yeah, the focus is so important, to be able to just focus on one thing. That's why even with my workout programs, I try to focus on the real basics. I don't try to get real fancy and do a lot of different things, because when time gets limited and you have so much stuff going on and so many things to think about, you end up going, I'm not even going to do it. But if it's just real basic and go, oh, all I have to do is go out and do one exercise today and do it 5 times at, this weight, and write it down on a little journal, and you'll be done with it. At least you did it, and you're on to progressing onto something.
Yeah. So I think that might be a good topic, and it'll be helpful for people to hear. And we can help, at least if they're not moving forward at all, maybe we can get them moving a little bit forward, and it will help us as well. It's always good to have a reminder of how to get organized and focus your thoughts and focus your energies.
In jiu-jitsu, there's a saying that you just got to keep moving, and that principle falls over to life too. As long as you're moving, it makes everything advanced. At least you're going and progressing, and you're not standing still or sliding backwards.
Yep, absolutely.
So you ready to wrap this up?
Yep.
All right. Well, we thank you very much for joining us, and we would like you to check out swiftkickinatheass.com. Sign up for our email list, and it's real easy to do. It's right at the top of the page. And with that, you'll get entrance into our membership site, which will give you courses, John's simple spending tool, and a lot of cool other goodies that we'll constantly add in there. And we appreciate you listening. Give us a review and a rating in iTunes. And if you like this, share it with someone so we get more audience and we get out there and we keep on making episodes for you, because we make no income from this. This is out of the goodness of our heart.
Yep. And make sure you give us some feedback, because we'd love to hear from you.
Peace.
Until next time. Peace.